Welcome back to the Malt YouTube channel, Homebrewers. This video, we are taking another look at small batch brewing. Specifically, we're going to look at what gear I would pick if I were going to dive into the world of small batch brewing at home in my kitchen.
James, this small batch brewing, like stovetop in your kitchen, this has been your bag for a couple of years now, and you've created a load of different products on our site that kind of fit into this area.
Yes, Martin, I have, and it's an area that I think is really exciting and actually has been really popular with our customers over the last couple of years, because I'm a firm believer that you can brew absolutely world-class beer no matter what batch size or equipment you're brewing on. It's about you, your methods, the steps you take to ensure that the beer is looked after throughout the whole journey, and it's totally translatable from 5 litre stovetop size brewing all the way up to, you know, big batches that people make at home, 100, 150 litres. But what's really got me excited recently is that we've done a few experiments here, and it's got me thinking about actually what are the limits with this, and actually are there any limits? I don't think there are.
So you're saying that we can do any beer style at home in the kitchen on our stovetop?
Absolutely, from grain as well.
There's a whole load of 5 litre stovetop recipe kits on our site that you've created.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. And actually, Martin, I've just added another 5 on there, right? And they're ones that are based on some of our most popular, but also some of our most loved recipe kits we've put out in the last few years.
So some of those breweries we've visited,
yep,
and taken some influence from those to create a 5 litre version.
Absolutely, but we'll come on to that maybe a little bit later, or possibly in another video. What we've done recently, actually, in a video, Joe and I used some equipment to kind of test out some methods that actually we've been really getting into here at the Malt Miller on some of our bigger batch brewing, that's given me the confidence to kind of go, actually, I think I could brew kind of the beer styles that I love brewing, big juicy pale ales, crispy lagers, those kind of things. I reckon I can brew them now on kind of 5 litre versions quite easily, which is why some of those recipe kits that I've put on the website are those newer kind of styles, and maybe a little bit different to some of the styles we've had on there previously. But if I think back, Martin, to a couple of years ago when we first started looking at this project and bringing in some of these smaller recipe kits, you know, Rob and I filmed a video in my kitchen actually at home.
Just to show it can be done in the kitchen with minimal space.
Yeah, and minimal equipment, and we went through the entire process from grain to glass, showing how easy it was. But things have changed a little bit since then, not just in that kind of 5 litre smaller batch space, but actually across all of home brewing, specifically when we talk about fermentation, because the world has opened up now in terms of pressure fermentation with things like the Thermzilla, you know, the kind of Keg King Apollos, and those kind of fermenters being much more accessible and easy to get your hands on and deploy now. And so many home brewers are using them as their go-to option. I really wanted to get into that on that smaller batch size, which is what Joe and I did a couple of weeks ago in the video where we used the Oxebar kegs to pressure ferment and serve from, which is what's inspired me to think about this video today and really run through my ideal setup if I were going to be doing this at home rather than brewing 23, 25 litre batches like I normally do.
Yeah, well, nothing stands still, not here at the Malt Miller. You know, there's new products every week. It's December 25. So now we're going to go through the things that you would pick from the current range that we have available, and taking some of those learnings you've got from bigger batch all grain brewing.
Absolutely.
Let's start from the top.
Yep.
The brewing process, making worts.
Yeah.
You know, you could do that in a large pot you've got at home. What have we got in front of us?
Well, Martin, it's no wonder that I've gone for our 12 litre kettle. We sell them, obviously, but there's a reason we sell them. Actually, you brought them in originally as Herms vessels, didn't you, for the big kind of 3-vessel brewing systems that we have, but they're perfect for stovetop brewing. Yes, you could do this, the mashing process, with a big stock pot or something like that, but there are some real benefits to using this kettle in my experience. Now, the first thing is it's got that same kind of feel and quality that you would expect from a brewing kettle. Specifically though, there's things like the rubber handles make it easy to move around. Yep. They're insulated. You've got the sandwich stainless steel bottom, which distributes heat from your stove really easily. Works with, you know, gas, electric, or induction. Yeah. It's got the etchings on the inside as well, so you can see your volumes quite nicely. You've also got the temperature gauge on the front, which is useful for the majority of the brewing process, but there are times when actually you know, we might want something a little bit more accurate. And then the big thing for me is having the ball valve on the front. Now, we're big advocates of trying to make sure you transfer as clean a wort as possible into your fermenter. And that ball valve really helps with that, because you know you can let all of the trubs settle into the kettle after the boil, or if you're doing a whirlpool, let the hops settle, then transfer nice clean bright wort into your fermenter, which gives you the best chance of having bright beer or very clean beer.
I mean that beautiful 304 stainless steel with the brush finish, so it's not going to leave loads of fingerprints on it as well, which is also really nice.
Yeah, that is nice. Yeah. It's easy to clean. You know, the thing about this kettle for me as well, Martin, is the volume of it being 12 litres. That means that I can push my boundaries of what I want to brew on a 5 or 6 litre batch. You know, I could comfortably brew an 8 litre batch of beer on this. Equally, I could brew a 5 litre batch of something really big and thick and of a high gravity, you know, a big juicy stout or a massive double IPA or something, because you can get more grain in it. Equally, because of the volume size of it, it means we don't have to worry about doing sparging, which on a kitchen brewer scale, I actually think it's just a step that for the most part is unnecessary and is just going to complicate matters and slow you down on the day. The beauty of small batch brewing is you can get it done relatively quickly and clean up afterwards quickly.
The other thing is, if you do eventually upgrade to something bigger, these still come in useful. Decoction.
Yeah, sparge water.
I use one of these in my decoction vessel at home. Yeah. It's brilliant.
We could use a grain bag, okay? There's nothing wrong with using a grain bag to hold our grains, but actually I've gone for our big hop spider as my pick. Having brewed on this a number of times and done small batch brews with it, this little hop spider is the perfect fit to go inside.
Yeah, hold your grains.
Yeah, lid kind of fits back on, but you know, that's not a major problem. But you can hold so much more grain in there and it's really free flowing. There is another benefit as well.
We're going to talk about turning the heat on while you...
Yes, yeah. You know, because of the kind of volume of this, you are going to lose some heat throughout the mashing process. You might lose a few degrees quite easily if you just leave it stood there.
Yeah.
So having a stainless steel basket to hold your grain in...
No risk of melting.
No risk of melting it. You can turn the heat back on. It's got a little lip there at the bottom, which means that the grain isn't going to be in contact with the element directly. You can get in there and stir it, get yourself back up to temperature, turn the heat off, job done. It's just a really nice little solution. Plus, cleaning it out at the end, that's way easier than a grain bag.
Oh God, yes. What are the other bits you got on the table here, James?
Well, this one won't be unfamiliar to you, Martin, a mash paddle. Now, I've picked a plastic one because on this kind of batch size, a plastic one is perfectly adequate. When you start doing bigger batch sizes, you really want a stainless steel one. Plastic, it kind of goes a little bit softer when it's warm and you're in there, and you know, if it's a really big beer you're trying to dough in, you could very well snap it if you're a bit vigorous.
But it's a step up from what's in the kitchen drawer.
Yeah, it is, and it's dedicated equipment, which is always nice to have for this kind of stuff. But yeah, no surprises there. Now, one of the other things I think is vital, Martin, is about temperature control. Now, the gauge on the front of the kettle is really good, right?
Yeah, but it's a short probe.
It is.
It's not going all the way through.
Yeah, and there are times where you probably want to be really accurate with your mash temperatures. So I've gone with an instant read thermometer. You know, we've got a couple of different ones here. We've got the Inkbird one, which we've been selling for a little while now.
I love that one. It's rechargeable and it opens when it comes up when you open it. Yeah, so it's great.
But then we've also got the KegLand one, which is a little bit cheaper, but does exactly the same job and is going to give you an instant temperature reading of what's going on in your mash. So that if you do need to whack the heat on to bring the mash temperature up, you can just be a little bit more precise with that and then switch the heat off nice and quickly so you don't overshoot.
Really good for barbecuing as well, James.
Yeah, I know you love temp checking, you know, your big joints of meat. Struggling to not say anything that's an innuendo there. Now, one other thing that I think is really vital, and probably a little bit more vital for small batch brewing than bigger batches, is a refractometer. Personally, I find a refractometer is like a nice to have on brew day. Yeah. Because I like to be able to see what's going on with the mash throughout the mashing process, check my gravity at the end of the mash so that if I need to kind of boil off or dilute, I can do that before I start boiling.
Rather than taking a big sample and losing a large portion of what is a small batch anyway.
Yeah, and that's where this comes into its own, you know. When you get to the end of your brew day, yes, you can check your gravities at the beginning of the boil and, you know, make adjustments on the fly if you need to. But where this comes into its own is at the end of brew day, you just need a couple of drops of wort on the sight glass here, and you can then see what the gravity you've achieved is without having to take a whole sample, because once you've got a sample in a trial jar, you don't really want to put that back into your fermenting work. That's a very quick way to end up with an infected beer. So that just saves us a little bit more finished beer by using that.
This is kind of helping to step it up again, because you're teaching a process of taking measurements and recording notes and just knowing how to repeat that brew again.
Yeah, and how to correct things on the fly, you know, and these are all skills from brewing bigger batch sizes that when you make the step from maybe this size to something bigger, you've already got those skills and you can take them with you. Now, we need to talk about fermentation, because this is where I think this is kind of quite a new thing for me.
Are you taking us a leap to dispense here?
No, Martin, come on, like, don't be like that. You've seen the video where Joe and I used the 8-litre Oxebars to ferment and serve from, right?
Yeah.
Now, like, yes, we can use the smaller plastic bucket fermenters. You know, we've got that lovely little 5-litre one from Handcraft Supply. What we get here is something that we can use as a pressure fermenter. I've become so passionate about pressure fermentation in the last couple of years and the benefits that it can bring, plus the styles that it really like leans into, you know, quick lagers, really bright, juicy hop bombs, and, you know, New England IPAs and pale ales that you can brew in low oxygen environments. This is where I think the shift really has come about, because you can use these Oxbars to ferment your kitchen brewer batch sizes in really easily.
Yeah, no, you were talking about different batch sizes. So the kettle's 12 litres, you could do maybe up to 7 or 8 in there. Perfect, these are 8 litres.
Yeah, exactly. You know, if you overshoot your numbers, right, and you end up with a batch of beer that's a little bit over and you want to dilute it down, well, you can, because you've got the extra space. You've got headroom in there, you know. It's just a really versatile option, and it doesn't take up a huge amount of space. You know, the footprint of it is actually smaller than those 5-litre fermenter buckets that we do. Yes, it's taller, but, you know, if it's just in like your kind of on your countertop in the kitchen or in the corner in the living room, just somewhere where the ambient temperature is decent, it's absolutely perfect for that. It is important that you have a spunding valve attached.
Yes.
Yeah, because you've not got an airlock on there to let the gas escape kind of naturally, the CO2.
And you can't rely on just the PRV.
No, so you really do need a spunding valve on there, and that then opens up the ability to pressure ferment. You know, you want to make a lager in quick time at a higher temperature, say it's 15, job done. You want to brew a juicy kind of New England style, set it much lower to like 5, just to really let the gas out and not subdue the hop and yeast characteristics. It's just an awesome solution. Now,
yeah, I was going to say, you've got 2 here.
I do.
And you've got one in the lovely neoprene jacket, which I absolutely love.
I personally, Martin, I think these, because of the cost of them, get 2. If you're going to be using this method, get 2, because actually you've then got one to ferment in. You can transfer, once that's done, into the other one to serve in. And then that can go, you know, maybe in a fridge or like the coldest part of your house to be served from. And the other thing with it, Martin, as well, is the jacket. Now, that neoprene jacket is great because, you know, you can have it on there whilst it's fermenting, just because it gives a little bit of insulation. But actually, if you're serving from it and you want to take it to a party, it's great. It's got a carry strap on it. You can be the coolest guy at the party walking around with a keg of beer around your shoulder.
I took one of these on holiday when we were down to Cornwall. 8 litres of hazy in there, brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. It also helps make it stand up because there's a flat base in there.
Yes, that's a really important point. Now, what I would say is, I've said maybe get 2 8s. You could get an 8 for fermenting in and then 2 4s, you know, and transfer both of them into 4s with separate tap-in head units so that you're keeping it under pressure and oxygen free. But what you've then got is 2 4-litre kegs that are far easier to fit into a fridge. You know, you could have a 4-litre one there in its little jacket, stood up with a tap on, job done.
These are just so multi-purpose. I mean, you could even use this to go and get some RO water from Spotless before you start your brew.
Yeah.
This has still got the solid dip tube in, so you're not being an advocate for switching that out for a floating dip tube?
Only reason for that is I haven't tried it yet. And I worry that if you put a floating dip tube in there, a piece of silicone, it's going to get kinked at some point because it's quite narrow.
Yeah.
Which is why I think transferring out of one and off your yeast and hops that you fermented in into a clean one to serve from is a sensible measure. You've got the little basket on there. I'm more worried about flavour having left it in contact with the hops and the yeast for such a long time.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, you don't have that surface area for the silicon to kind of float around on like you do with the Oxy 20 and the Firmzilla.
So we've got our Oxebars and we've fermented our beer in one, we've transferred it into another. Now, to transfer it, we're going to need gas, okay? And this is where I think if you're going to make this kind of leap, you need to be serving kind of keg kind of beer as well. Saves so much time on like packaging, and you can get the beer carbonated quicker rather than having to wait for it to naturally carbonate in the bottle. So therefore you can be drinking it much quicker. So my picks for gear for this, Martin, really centre around the fairly new to us core actuator 360 mini regulator from KegLand.
Yep.
You've actually got one, haven't you?
I bought one, like I say, to take on holiday with me. Absolutely brilliant bit of kit.
Yeah, it's so versatile because you can use it with a SodaStream bottle like we've got set up here, but also it will work with the 16 gram CO2 bulbs, which means that, yeah, if you want to take it away with you, you know, and serve, you don't have to take the big SodaStream bottle, you can take the little bulbs and use
Exactly
it there.
what I did,
yeah.
the bulbs.
But equally, if you want to have a bigger bottle, which is slightly better value in the long run, then the SodaStream bottles, that's going to last you ages on this kind of size.
Well, yeah, if you're moving it from one to the other, definitely go for that.
Yeah, and if you're going to need to add a little bit of carbonation to your finished beer. Now, if we're pressure fermenting, we can save carbon dioxide there by increasing the pressure towards the end of fermentation and naturally carbonate the beer. But you might, in some cases, need to add a little bit more just on top of it. And again, that's where that will come in handy. The other thing I love about the core actuator 360 regulator is that it comes with an adapter. So you can either have it attached to a piece of gas line like this and a gas disconnect, or you can hook it up to a standard kind of MFL style keg disconnect, you know, and then have it much closer and sort of mounted on the body of the keg itself.
That's the route I went with it, actually.
Yeah, it's really versatile. Now, the other thing that I like about it as well is, you know, we've covered this in a video just on that whole thing, but you can change the plane where the gas exits. You know, you take the little bung out, put in your adapter there so that it comes out the bottom rather than out the side, whatever works for you really. Now, when it comes to actually pouring the beer, you know I'm a big lover of these, but the NukaTap Mini suits this perfectly with the flow control disconnect from KegLand. Now, that means that, yes, I can manage the flow of the beer coming out so it doesn't all foam up, but it's also I was not expecting that.
It's loaded.
Yeah. But it's also just a really nice handy little size, you know. It's got a little trick up its sleeve as well. Now, you might not want to take 8 litres with you. You might want to just have a bottle, you know, a small bottle, maybe like a PET kind of 500 ml beer bottle.
Feeling generous, you want to share one with
someone
else, yeah.
Now, what I love about this is you can unscrew the nozzle, and underneath there is an MFL thread.
So just put John Guest on there.
Yep, screw a John Guest fitting on there, out straight onto beer line. If you wanted to, you could get, you know, the little T-piece, the red T-piece, so that you could fill and purge that 500 ml bottle so it's got no oxygen in there, and then fill it through this from your bigger keg. You know, you could really go to town on that for not a lot of money and just having a few little handy accessories.
So you're converting it into a bottle filler, basically.
Yes, you are, and it's just a handy little thing.
Right, we've talked about brewing, we've talked about fermenting, we've talked about dispensing. I've still not got beer, but I can still see other things sitting over there. What else are you going to show me?
Hold tight, because I've got a few other little bits and pieces that I think are vital if you're going to go down this route. I did say earlier, Martin, that a hydrometer is a vital part of the brewing process. You need it to validate that fermentation has finished, right? You need to take 2 readings, one when you think fermentation's done, and then one 24, 48 hours later to validate that it's done, right? So unfortunately, we are going to have to take some larger samples to check that, but also it's going to last with you throughout your brewing hobby. You know, it's one of those things, it's an investment.
Well, unless you leave it lying on the side of the sink and it rolls into it.
Yeah, I know, you've done that a number of times, haven't you?
Happens a lot.
Yeah, you need a trial jar, you need a hydrometer. It's another skill to learn, right? Understanding fermentation. If you can really build that skill no matter what batch size you're brewing, helps you as and when you decide to scale up. Now, cleaning. We could just clean our brewing gear, like our standard brewing gear, with warm soapy water, right? That's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
For things like our mash tun and boil kettle, you know, our 12 litre kettle, absolutely fine. the plastic fermenters, you can't use really hot water with.
A little bit more delicate, aren't they?
Yeah, well, you put hot water in them, they're going to melt, right?
Yeah.
Like really hot water.
Yeah, they're going to melt, and over time they'll delaminate.
Yep, so we are big advocates of this product here, Brew 10.
I love Brew 10, it's so good. Low temperature.
Yep, low temperature, 40 degrees, 50 degrees, no more than that required. You don't need a huge amount of it in one of those 8-litre Oxebars, just leave it to soak. Make sure that it hasn't been left to go really dry and crusty after fermentation, but give it a good rinse out, fill it up with warm water and some of that, leave it overnight, leave it for a couple of hours, pour it out, give it a good rinse, should come out absolutely sparkling. It's a little bit more of an investment in terms of kind of the cleaning products that we sell, but it does a fantastic job and will preserve the life of those products for you. You've got to have sanitizer, right? We've always said cleaning is one step, sanitizing is another. So, you know, a good quality no-rinse sanitizer and
Syringe.
a syringe.
Or pocket beer engine.
Yes, yeah, a handy pocket beer engine. So yeah, you know, real basic stuff, but all of that combined isn't going to take up a huge amount of space, but you're going to be able to level up your small batch home brewing. Personally, I think, you know, there's no limit applied here. You could brew any beer style you want using these methods and end up with absolutely top-notch results.
You've given us some really good food for thought here, taking some of these new modern products and putting them into this small scale brewing. However, the proof of the pudding is actually putting them into practice. When are you going to do that?
Well, I've been thinking about this. You know, we have got now, I've put a couple more advanced recipes on the website that I think lend themselves really well to some of this equipment. So what I'd like to do in the next couple of weeks is get you to come and do a couple of small 5-6 litre brews with me, and we'll see how we get on, because I'm confident that I can knock out a beer as good as I could on a Grainfather, a Brewzilla, you know, on a brew in the bag system of a much bigger scale, but on this small batch size.
How about we do big batch versus little batch and see how they turn out?
We could do that. I'm sure that I'll win, but we'll have to see, won't we?
I get to choose the recipe.
Okay, all right. Of the ones that I've put on the website.
Okay.
Yeah. Right, that's a deal. Can't wait to try that out. Now, if you have made it to the end of the video, thank you very much for watching. First and foremost, though, if you have thoughts about like essential bits of kit that you think would be vital for somebody starting out on brewing these kind of small kitchen brewer, stovetop type homebrew recipes, please do let us know, because I'd love to hear your thoughts. Equally, if you've got questions on any of the equipment we've covered or anything you'd like us to go into any more detail about, please let us know in the comments section below.
If you found this video interesting and useful, please hit like, subscribe and hit the bell for notifications.
And don't forget, you can follow us on all of our socials, so Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, kind of all the usual places. There's also a link down below so you can subscribe to our newsletter to stay up to date with everything we're doing here at the Malt Miller, and we will see you again soon. Have a great brew.